Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AAS YouTube channel. And this one is going down the scientific editor series. You get to meet your scientific editors. And I'm very happy to have Maria Womack with us today. Hi, Maria.
Hello, Frank. How are you doing?
I am doing well on this January 26, 2022, as we record this one. It is winter in Phoenix, although we are warming up a little bit, getting a little warmer in the day. And Maria, where are you located at?
I am in Tampa, Florida, which is where I've been for several years, and work remotely at National Science Foundation.
Very cool. No snow on the ground there in Florida, just like Phoenix.
No, it's supposed to be 29 in a couple of days, so.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Very good. Very good. Cool. Maria, what do you like to do for research?
Well, mostly what I really like to do is spectroscopy. And over most of my research has been on comets and the interstellar medium, and with occasional planet or exoplanet thrown in. And most of that has been spectroscopy. So I like to use spectroscopy to test chemical models, usually like abundances, but also physical models sometimes as well, depending on what the data want to show me. So. And I've also worked using techniques, imaging and photometry. So right away, you know, I'm an observer. So
Questions are good. Very cool. So I'm kind of curious how people get into their fields, because, you know, when you come into a field, there's 10,000 things one could do. And so I'm always curious how people sort of choose, or the field chooses them, how they get into. So how did you get into spectroscopy of small bodies?
well, this is definitely a case of the field choosing me. I originally wanted to do something else, but in the mid 80s, which is when I started grad school, there was Comet Halley, and there was a lot of money for Comet Halley, especially at Arizona State. I don't know if you know, we have something in common there, because that's where I got my degree.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So
that's great. That's great.
a good place.
Who was your thesis advisor?
Susan Wyckoff and Lucy Zuris. So I had two thesis advisors.
Wow.
And when I got to ASU, so Sue and Peter Wanger had, well, Sue mostly had a lot of grant money for cometary spectroscopy. And she's like, well, I do galaxies too, but right now I really do comets. Do you want to do that? And so that was a paid research assistantship. And I spent a few years doing optical spectroscopy and infrared spectroscopy of comets, not just Halley, but I swear comets all over the world, and helping her and others archive them with NASA. And somehow that is not what my dissertation is on. So toward the end of that, Lucy Zuris came to ASU, and I know she's at Arizona now, but she was at ASU to start with. And she was,
Go ahead.
So she was doing millimeter wave spectroscopy of interstellar medium, and I just thought that was even more interesting. So I ended up doing my dissertation on interstellar, mostly chemistry, working with her. In fact, she was in the chemistry department. So.
Very cool. Yeah, I was going to ask what your dissertation was, but you answered it right there and how it got there.
Yeah.
So you did a dissertation then. So what was your very first AAS Journal article? AJ?
It was AppJ Letters, and it was one of those dissertation papers.
Cool.
It was N2H+, which is protonated nitrogen, in Orion. And as part of my dissertation, I had 4 24-hour periods in a row on the NRAO telescope at Kitt Peak. And that's a long time to stay awake.
Yeah.
I tell you gotta go to sleep at some point. And we had perfect weather, and the line came through booming, you know, stronger than we expected. So I had a whole lot of data to work with. And so this was really interesting, because N2H+ is actually a really good tracer of cold gas. And so Orion is a big star forming region, right? Especially OMC1, where we were looking. And so the lines, these were hyperfine lines that were split up And I could see as I looked across the region, when I first got a spectrum, there were two sets of lines like this. I'm like, well, that's strange. N2H plus is only supposed to look like that. And why is it looking like that?
Yeah.
And so I ended up doing a big map while I was there. And you can see that there was evidence for two sources of N2H plus, just by separated by 2 kilometers per second in velocity with the local standard of rest. And right at the region where the lines overlapped is where there was a lot of protostars. And so we looked pretty suspicious that this had something to do with it.
Sure.
And so that was part of it.
Very cool.
Anyway, that was the first paper.
And we will put a link to that paper in the description below the video, so you can check
Okay.
it first. How about that? So time went on from there, and you probably published a few more papers in the AAS Journals. And then the PSJ, the Planetary Science Journal, started, I guess, about 2 years ago, roughly. And you became a scientific editor for the Planetary Science Journal. And so why did you decide to become a scientific editor?
Well, I really enjoy my own research programs, right? And working with students and collaborators. But I also really enjoy working with people, with astronomers, more on a larger view, if you will. And I really, personally, I enjoy learning about all this cutting edge research. So I did want to contribute to the astronomical field in a significant way. And I thought the PSJ, the launch of that was a perfect way to do it. I was really excited about the planetary science aspect of it, and that it would include not just planetary science of our solar system, but planetary sciences of other, exoplanetary science as well. I'm not saying this very well, but also, it's meteoritics and astrobiology. It has something to do with, solar systems or planets, small bodies, send it to us. So that was really great to have it be singled out like that. But I would say the part I was most excited about was that it was going to be open access.
Good.
And, for a lot of my career, I have not had easy access to journal articles. I was a professor at St. Cloud State for 18 years. Really nice place to work. But they didn't have the biggest library.
Yeah.
And even when I worked for USF, more research, still did not have all the articles. And really, to do research, you need to be able to get to the articles and get to them quickly. And to me, my own research productivity, if you will, has been tied very clearly to whether I could access articles, whether I was next to a good library. So to me, that was always personally important and something I was really passionate about. I'm really glad to see now that the rest of the AAS Journals are doing
Now we're
that.
all open access.
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
I've already had benefits there. You can skip one extra login. From my point of view, it just bang takes you right to it, and it's great.
Right. Well, and how many times do you go to the article you wanted, and then you see immediately that you need another article? That's going to be more helpful once you read it.
Chasing a line through the literature. Yes. Very good. So you've been a scientific editor now for about 2 years. And some people may wonder, what exactly does a scientific editor do? So what is sort of a typical day? What do you do when that goes on?
Well, my typical day, I usually do my scientific editing in the mornings.
Okay.
Always, I'm not a morning person, but I am for this. So I usually, get set up with my coffee and my cat on my lap and open everything up and see where everybody is with everything. And take care. We have software set up and log in, see if you've got any new assignments or if articles have come in from reviewers and are ready for decision. It's always really exciting when something's ready for a decision. And then there's, chasing the authors on revisions too. So sometimes you get a revised, manuscript comes in, you have to read through that, decide what to do. Some other things happen behind the scenes that I think a lot of people don't appreciate. Sometimes I open up a paper, I'm like, okay, because I always read through a paper when it comes in new and get a feel for it. Is this observational, is it theory, what experimental, who am I going to meet? Right. And sometimes the paper is, more often than you would think, is unreadable. Oops. It's missing something. Maybe the figures are all missing. This is strange. This happened to me before. Or maybe one figure is missing. A table is missing, or it's just somehow, I'm sure it looked fine on the author's side, but it does not
look good there.
Cannot send it out. And so sometimes, or PSJ, the authors want it to be dual anonymous, but there's their name all over the place and they didn't take their names off. So there are a lot of people who help me solve this problem, help the authors sort things out, like Janice and Lakshmi, and who are some other people? Alex, yes. So this is, a lot of times I have to talk to them first just to get it fixed. And they can sometimes do this without having to contact the author. That's one of the reasons we do like authors to upload all their files. Sometimes we can fix things. Sometimes it's bold all the way through. Janice and Alex can unbold it really fast. So yeah, so there's always something to do.
There's always something to do. And speaking of that, so roughly how many new submissions, new manuscripts do you get per week?
Gosh, just a handful.
Okay.
But I don't know, maybe half a dozen or sometimes less, and sometimes more. It really varies depending on, I'm not really sure. Sometimes it seems tied to meetings.
Of course.
But that's not all, because I always have about 30 or so that are under review.
Right, in the pipe.
And articles frequently even go for second review. And so you have to keep track of that. And then that might have 40 or so under revision, meaning I'm waiting for the authors to send it back in.
Yeah, so there's always something to do in that morning, right? Whether it's new manuscripts or authors revising or referee reports or
yes,
all of that.
Yes.
So yeah, so you raised a couple of really good points there. So why don't we go ahead and let's drill in on some of those. So a new manuscript comes in, and what do you think makes for a good, solid initial submission to PSJ?
Polish it. Don't just send it in when you think it's done. Maybe take a day or two and just really go over it again. But I know I've got something that's probably pretty solid. So if it makes it clear right away what the results are and why they're important. And sometimes I have to read a long time to even understand what are they claiming that has happened. And that helps me figure out who we're going to need, what kind of reviewers we're going to need. But also put the results in the context of the field. It doesn't exist. I mean, I suppose it could happen occasionally. You discover something incredibly brand new, but you're still going to need to say what the context is. Right. And also for letters, if you're submitting to APJ letters, I would say make it really clear in the paper why it's timely and why you think it's going to make a significant contribution to the field. You might as well say that. Sometimes authors will put that in a cover letter, and that's really useful to me as a scientific editor, because that's it especially with editors, APJ letters, one of the first things I have to assess is, well, does it make sense that it's going to letters? Do I see why? And the way I see why, either I just happen to know, yeah, that's timely and important. I mean, all papers are important, but with the urgency that letters is requiring.
Right. Impact.
Sometimes I can't see it. And I'd like to hear from the authors why they think it is. And I will always read that. Should be in the abstract, but sometimes it isn't.
Or the introduction. Sometimes people put an introduction toward the end of the introduction, right? This work is novel because ABC and
right. Or the conclusion.
Or the conclusions, that works too. But yeah, pro tip for authors, say why your work is important, why it's new, what's the significant new result.
Yeah, or why you pick letters as opposed to the main journal.
All right. Cool. So authors, so they will do their submission, hopefully a good initial submission, and then they go through the peer review process where they revise their manuscripts, and it goes on through. And so in that process, do you have any tips for authors on how to handle, let's say, a review process?
You know, like when they get the review back?
For example.
Yeah. I know, you know, from being an author myself, it's always a really exciting time. You skim it, you're looking, oh God, did they trash it? Did they praise it? What's the, you know, what, it's like binary almost. But you need to, you know, take a, you know, a day to really think about it. And if you're somehow upset, do not write the editor right away. If I'm the scientific editor you're writing, I guarantee you I will wait a day before I reply to you. So if you're upset.
Good.
So that I understand that can happen sometimes, but I would say one of the things to keep in mind about the process is we're not trying to be gatekeeping so much really as finding a way to improve the paper.
Correct. Yes.
And sometimes that can be improved and it needs to be improved by doing changes to the work. In some, you know, in some ways that might even look kind of major. And that's think of that as, in a sense, the start of a dialogue. If someone is suggesting major changes, you need to think about that. But I would say try to find a way to let the comments improve your paper. And keep in mind that if you think, this reviewer misread my paper, this reviewer's an idiot. They didn't understand what I was saying. I mean, again, I've been on this side too. Keep in mind that if this happened for that reviewer, it may easily happen to other readers. And so find a way to help that reviewer not be misled, you know, help them understand it better.
Sure, because when you write a paper on your own, or you're in, you know, your own group, there can be a little bit of an echo chamber there, and it sounds really good when you wrote it, but then when somebody else reads it, it may not be so clear. Right. So that's really what they're saying. They may be critiquing it, but the message behind the message is it's not clear what you're doing. Right.
So sometimes you're just doing that, and you know, occasionally you're going to have reviewers suggest something that you just don't think is right. Don't be afraid to say that. It's, you know, I'm very interested in hearing, you know, it's fine. You know, a lot of times, okay, I'll fix that typo. I totally agree. And sometimes they have a great idea that you can see. And, you know, if you don't see a way you can accept that recommendation, you know, then find a way to talk about that either to the referee or the editor.
Yeah, it's completely fair to push back against the report. That's perfectly fine. Where it goes depends on the process and what the point is and all that. But you know, you can push back on referee reports. They're not do this or else kind of things. So, very cool. Okay, let's take it from the other side. Let's take it from the referee side. So what do you think makes for a good referee report? Good referee report.
Referee report that I always come back to be very specific about any concerns you have. Don't just say this is, I mean, I know you can't avoid it sometimes, this is unclear, but try to be clear about what is unclear, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's helpful when people are specific about the line numbers, for when papers are written with line numbers on the side. But just be very specific about the concerns you have and why. Be kind as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
If you see something you really like, don't be afraid to say it.
Perfect. Yep.
That's really useful.
Yep.
Be quick as you can. That's useful.
Time frame, yes.
There's also this confidential comments to the editor. I really find that helpful. If someone wants to tell me something that they don't want maybe to share directly with the author, that is really helpful. And that is confidential. That does not go to the author. That's useful.
Yeah, and try and make those two consistent. It's one thing to have a report to the author where it's, kind of glowing and, neutral. And then in the confidential comments, this is the worst thing since ever.
Right. If you think it's the worst thing since ever, do not send a glowing report to the,
much more.
I have seen that a few times. And now I have to explain to the author why the paper's not going to be published. Right.
Yeah, make that consistent. Yeah, don't be too bothered by the line numbers that we're started using. I think most authors and most referees find them very helpful. I did have one referee who bailed on me because somehow the line numbers got in the way of their reading, or that was the claim. And so, okay, it's just line numbers. Put your filter up. But yeah, they did bail on that. PSJ is also somewhat unique in that it regularly uses 2 referees.
Yes.
For every submission.
That's the minimum.
Ooh, do you ever go to 3?
Yes, I've had to go to 3 sometimes. That's usually when one of the reviewers doesn't really submit a useful report.
Yes, right.
And by useful, I mean brief.
Yes.
Overly brief. I'm like, well, this, you not helpful.
Right.
I might need a 3rd one if I had conflicting reports. If that's happened, that's maybe once.
Yeah, that will happen. But yeah.
I mean, that I would be driven to a 3rd one. Usually, if referees disagree with each other, it's pretty straightforward to figure out what's going on. But yeah, there are 2 reviewers, and I think it does make for a more polished paper.
Sure.
And it's useful, and sometimes I don't just review or just edit for PSJ. I also do it for AppJ Letters, AJ. That then supplements that. And sometimes I'll use 2. This is especially useful if you have a paper that has both theoretical and observational components to it. There will be people who can do both of them, but I guarantee you they'll be conflicted somehow, or they're already on the co-author list. So it's handy to be able to write reviewers and say, would you be willing to handle the more theoretical part? And don't worry about the observations.
Right. Let's see, other avenues where I've done that, use 2 referees is something that'll have a strong science component and then a strong machine learning or AI component. And so you get 2 referees who are both experts in one or the other, not necessarily both, and just make sure that's a go. Yeah, and we do have some topics in the AAS journals that also routinely use 2 referees. Laboratory astrophysics, for example, is one. And I'd say in my own work, maybe 10%, 15% of the time, I will use 2 referees to go through with something. But other than that, I do single. And yeah, double anonymous review. That's a good one. Roughly what percentage do you see coming through as DAR? double anonymous?
I think it's around 80%. So the our lead editor is Faith Vilas,
Yep.
and I'm just quoting her. So,
Wow.
I would say mine is probably my personal, the ones I see, it's probably higher than that. Probably higher.
Wow. Okay. Too much journals there. I think in mine, I probably see in the single digits, 1%. Maybe.
Yeah, right. A lot of people don't know that you can request that.
Yeah.
In fact, you can opt out of, as you're hinting, you can opt out of dual anonymous review with PSJ.
Mm-hmm.
But the default is
a dual anonymous. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And so if you do a dual anonymous, that's perfectly fine, but try and hold back from immediately posting on archive or on your GitHub page or on your Zenodo. It doesn't do much good if you want a double anonymous review to then suddenly announce it to everybody. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you really want a dual anonymous review, don't post it on the archive with the same title.
Yeah. That doesn't help. It just
the reviewer who's doing her or his homework or their homework will go to the archive, not the archive per se, but let's say an ADS abstracts or something, and search for the latest papers on this subject.
They'll see it. And all of a sudden that dual anonymous that you wanted is poof, gone.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Maria, do you have anything else you'd like to share about the peer review process or the editorial process of the journals?
Well, let's see. Gosh, I think we've covered almost everything. I really, really enjoy working on it, and I enjoy talking with people or emailing. It's not really talking, but I really enjoy reading the articles, reading the comments from people that are sent back and forth. It's like a journal club in a way, a daily journal club.
Yeah.
Because you cannot avoid reading lots of papers in the field. And in some cases, especially where I know the people in the field, I'm like, oh wow, I can't wait to see what they think of these comments, and how they're going to respond. And it's pretty exciting.
It's a human game.
Yeah.
Fine. Very cool. Well, Maria, I want to thank you so much for spending a little bit of time and talking about your research and your role with the AAS Journals as a scientific editor. So thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And that'll do, everyone. And I hope this made your astronomy day just a little bit better. And we will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.